Chapter 7. Myuu Woods. Myuu Woods woke from another restless sleep to the sound of knocking at his door. He didn't know what time it was, but could tell from the sunlight attempting to peek through his curtains that he was awake too early. He slowly sat up on his mattress, trying his hardest to keep himself awake as he listened intently. The knocking continued, with 3 more heavy slams coming to his door. Myuu scrambled off the mattress he kept on the floor, trampling over several empty wrappers and bottles that had amassed around it. To keep his balance, he leaned against the rickety wooden door of his closet before standing up straight. He reached under his yellow, stained pillow and pulled out a small switchblade he had kept under it for safekeeping. He stared at the knife for a moment, clutching it so tightly he could feel his hand trembling. He came for me during the day, he thought to himself, playing out every single possibility of what would happen the moment he opened the door. He stayed like that for a while, only breaking from the trance when the sounds of the door knocking outside returned quickly and loudly. Struggling to get to his feet, Myuu slowly crept across his dingy apartment with the knife behind his back. As he arrived at the door, he put his back to it and gazed out of the peephole, only to see 2 officers standing outside. The officer who appeared to be the one knocking was an older man. His face was square and rugged, with large bags drooping beneath his eyes and a poorly maintained mustache across his top lip, littered with gray hairs that showed his age. The officer next to him looked like a child by comparison. He was thin and clean-shaven, his large blue eyes showing a youthful enthusiasm that his older partner lacked. He had longer, black hair which looked to be slicked back. When Myuu got a good look at the officers, he let out a long sigh of relief, putting the knife on his kitchen island and speaking to them from the other side of the door. "Hello? Who's out there?" he said, in a weak, scared voice. There was a pause outside, with the 2 officers being heard saying something to each other quietly. Myuu couldn't quite make out what they were discussing before the older man spoke up. "We're with the CLPD. We're here to ask you a few questions about your brother," the officer said in a stern voice. The mention of his brother filled Myuu with dread. He caught himself shaking again, and began taking long, deep breaths in 4-second intervals to try and calm himself down. Eventually he built up the courage to reply. You finally found him?" Myuu asked, barely able to hide his own excitement at the possibility the nightmare he was living through would be over. There was a long pause outside again, with the officers being heard speaking amongst themselves once more before the younger man spoke up. "No, we haven't found him. That's actually why we're here. We were hoping you could help us," he replied. Myuu was now confused. He thought he'd told the police everything they'd needed to know years ago about his brother. Why were they back now? What could they possibly need to know? The questions sent his mind racing, fixating on every tiny detail that could be missing until one of the voices from outside interrupted his mental spiral. "Are you still there?" the older man said, starting to sound concerned. Myuu snapped out of it and pulled the door open a small crack, showing himself to the officers. The moment the door opened, he could see the sudden looks of shock that were displayed across their faces. The officer's eyes went wide, and Myuu swore he saw the younger one's jaw drop at the sight of him. It was the first time anyone had seen him in a while. Myuu rarely left home, and in those countless hours he spent laying around, waiting for his brother's return, he barely took care of himself. His long brown hair was matted and greasy, his eyes drooped down with deep purple bags hanging low beneath them from the countless nights spent awake, and he wore the same green t-shirt for countless nights on end, not even mustering the mental strength needed to change. It was no wonder the two officers looked so shocked. The older cop was the first of the two to actually speak up, with his younger partner still trying to find the words. He simply asked for the two of them to come inside, to which Leo agreed, opening the door completely. Their shocked reactions to Leo's appearance extended to that of his home, which, with the lights on, looked nothing like a proper living space. The apartment was practically empty, with barely any furniture in sight, aside from a worn-out, used couch that looked like a hand-me-down of a hand-me-down. The floor was covered in all sorts of garbage and unwashed laundry, all of which the two officers made an effort not to step over in a strange attempt to be courteous. Leo turned over to them, awkwardly grabbing onto his left arm and saying, "Sorry about the mess," in an almost sarcastic tone, before taking a seat on his couch. The entire couch let out a loud creaking sound, as if the sudden weight put onto it would cause the entire thing to shatter. The two officers looked around for any kind of chairs they could seat themselves with, and upon noticing that the couch was their only option, chose to continue standing as they spoke to Leo. The older officer spoke first, properly introducing himself. "Leo Woods, my name is Samuel Morgan. This here is my partner, Norman Keller." The younger one, Norman, gave a small, sad wave as his name was mentioned. "We're sorry to disturb, whatever it is you have going on here, but we were hoping to ask you a few questions about your brother." Leo looked up at Samuel and asked him, I thought I already told you guys everything years ago. You promised me you'd find him, and then you told me time and time again that you were still looking. What more could you possibly have to ask?" As Leo asked the question, he saw the two officers shoot each other concerned glances before Norman spoke up. "You, haven't been keeping up with the news at all, have ya?" Norman asked, scratching at the back of his head and avoiding eye contact. Leo looked confused between the two officers. He had no idea what they were trying to imply. He'd spent months isolating himself, only ever leaving his home when it was absolutely necessary. The fear of being followed was too great. In that time, he barely kept up with anything, viewing it all as a distraction that could let his guard down. "What are you talking about?" he asked, feeling the shaking sensation flush over his entire body once more. "What's happened?" There was another pause where the officers looked at each other as if quietly deciding who would break the news, before Samuel continued. "There's been a string of murders that have taken place over the last month, Leo. All men who have a similar description to yourself. My partner and I have strong suspicions that the culprit is your brother, Jeffrey Woods." Anxiety flooded through Leo's body at the mere mention of his name. His legs curled into his chest, and he began violently hyperventilating there on the couch. The two officers walked forward, trying their hardest to calm Leo down, but at that moment, he couldn't even hear them. Their voices turned to white noise, and Leo's vision became blurred. "Jeff is back. People are dying. It's all my fault. Why? Why did I have to survive? If I just died that night, then none of this would have..." Leo's thoughts were interrupted as Samuel grabbed him by the shoulders, bringing him back to his senses. "Hey," he said, in a surprisingly soft, concerned voice. "You're going to be okay. We'll protect you. If this killer's your brother, we promise we'll..." Samuel tried to continue to reassure Leo, but was cut off. "How did you find them?" Leo asked, staring down at the ground as he spoke. "The victims. How were they killed?" "They were all killed in the middle of the night," Norman said. "Most found with their throats slashed. We spoke to a couple of witnesses. All of them claimed our guy was a pale man in a white, dirty sweater with a big smile." Leo turned his gaze to Norman before responding in a near whisper. It's him. Samuel tried to continue the discussion, with Leo's simple response now piquing his interest even further. That description matches your brother? You're sure? I'm sure. Leo doubled down, turning his gaze back to Samuel, his eyes now wide and piercing. Samuel took his hands off Leo's shoulder and took a step back, now seating himself on the cleanest spot of the floor he could find. He leaned forward, trying to make sure that Leo paid very close attention to what he said next. Now listen, and listen well. If your brother really is our culprit, the only way we're gonna catch him is if we know what he wants. We need to know everything you can tell us, Leo. Don't spare a single detail, Samuel explained. The room went quiet after that, with the two officers now waiting for Leo's reply. Leo deliberated for a while over the request. The last time he trusted the police to find Jeff, the case went cold for years. He'd spent all that time living in constant fear that someday his brother would come back. Fear he was forced to live in because they couldn't help him. But today could be different. If Jeff was still out there for a fact, if he was actively hurting people, this could have been his opportunity to finally see an end to it. If he just trusted these two, he could finally begin to feel like his old self. Fine, he finally said, making his decision. But there was a condition. Something Leo needed the officers to follow through with, no matter what. But make me a promise. Norman was the first to step forward, replying before his partner could even consider the request. Anything. Whatever you want, we'll make it happen so long as you tell us what we need to know. Promise me you'll kill him. The words that came out of Leo's mouth sounded hollow and empty. Not an ounce of emotion or compassion could be felt. The two officers didn't know how to respond at first, merely sitting in the tense silence that came from the request. It was Samuel who spoke up this time, giving Leo exactly what he asked for. We promise, he said, hesitantly. Norman looked down to him with a questioning stare. It was clear the two didn't see eye to eye, but so long as Leo was given a promise from one of them, he didn't care. Okay then, I'll tell you everything.